so I had to start a union just to try to get some to be able to go to a doctor at the Young Turks. Then on the way out, as the union busting becomes public, the guy lies about me. The guy attacks me and my friends for how it started by saying that we were either manipulated or that we were in on it somehow. He's running for Congress while union busting. It's amazing. I'm working for Cenk Uygur and I'm not getting any health care. This is critical. Okay, this is critical right here. Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks company account, Cenk Uygur, put out information that they did not fact check to their audience about the origination of the union at the Young Turks. If it was a sincere mistake, sorry, this is how I podcast. I'm terrible at it. I would have been suspicious if all of a sudden after my boss runs for Congress, people get in touch with me and my friends and try to start a union out of nowhere. That would have been really freaking suspicious to me. And I decided to wake up that union drive, not knowing where it's going to end up, but just being like, I got to do something. I know why we started the union. And other workers had their other reasons. And there's probably some of the reasons that will never see the light of day. Because if he had to explain to his audience, oh yeah, my workers did have a genuine union here, they would say, well, what were their grievances? Why were they unionizing? And those are questions he does not want to answer. So I'm going to fucking answer him. That's what this whole thing is.
Didn't you see what they did to Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks?
My name's Hank. I worked at the Young Turks. I helped start the union there, and I'm doing a project called Tell the Truth, Cenk, a documentary film. Look in the description and a playlist link on my YouTube channel here. That is correcting the record on what the Young Turks told their audience about why the union started. I was very close to why it started. My working conditions were central to why it started. I am not guessing on what happened. I'm an original source on this project, and it was very annoying that I had to start the fucking union because I wasn't getting health insurance or paid days off or any benefits. They had me classified as an independent contractor and then as a part-time employee, even though I was working full-time hours. I've been making a stink about it online. I'm sure it's going to ruin my future employment prospects. It's just a thing I've decided to try to do that I also often wish I hadn't decided to do because it's been nothing but stress and annoyance. But it feels like an injustice that wasn't properly addressed. Then Cenk runs for Congress. We'd already been secretly unionizing, and the guy becomes a politician. Several months into us unionizing. In fact, it was well over a year into if you count the first Young Turks workers' attempt to start a union, which is about 18 months before Cenk became a politician. It stalled due to a round of firings. I ended up working back there as these classifications for zero health care, which is nuts. I'm working for Cenk fucking Uygur and I'm not getting any health care. And I decided to wake up that union drive, not knowing where it's going to end up, but just being like, I got to do something. They're not going to give me health insurance. I'm not going to get paid days off. I don't get bonus. I don't get any benefits working here full time, working alongside people who are classified differently than me. And so I asked for help from them. I asked for it to be fixed, and they changed my status to my classification to part-time temporary, which is bullshit. I'm giving you too much of the story here. So I know why we started the union, and other workers had their other reasons. And there's probably some of the reasons that will never see the light of day. But then when Cenk is now then becomes a politician and the union comes forward, I get fired about 5 weeks before the union comes forward. And then Cenk decides to bust the union, to reject the union. He refuses voluntary recognition, which is a delay tactic. I mean, that itself is union busting, but the purpose of that is to create a time to do union busting, to then insist on a second arbitrator supervised NLRB election conducted two months later or something, to give them time to exert their influence over their workers in order to try to disrupt the attempt to start a union at the guy's business. He's running for Congress while union busting. It's amazing. Included in that union busting was this lie that the reason the union started is that it's a political ploy by Cenk's congressional opponents, by Nancy Pelosi, IATSE, and Christy Smith. The thesis of the film, I'll just read it here from this article, is that the false narrative Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks spread about the origins of TYT Union, that it was a ploy by Nancy Pelosi and her minions to disrupt Cenk's 2019 to 2020 campaign for Congress as part of TYT's union-busting campaign, was not a mistake. It was a lie intended to prevent scrutiny into Cenk's employment practices, to avoid being asked, why did your workers want a union? And so I wrote this up. This article is very like emotional. It has a lot of like kind of interpretive analysis and gets into like some philosophy, ideology stuff just about the way that they use leverage. And it sort of zeroes in on the concept of leverage with TYT's and Cenk's number two at the Young Turks is this guy, Jack Gerard, who's a former health insurance executive. His LinkedIn, it was public, and it showed that he spent like at least 12 years working for Kaiser Permanente and Blue Cross of California, or something like that, as a health insurance executive. And so this is the guy that like kind of brought in some corporate structure and some practices to the Young Turks. I can't give you the full picture of all those, but you know, like goal worksheets and, you know, just corporate mindset kind of stuff. And you got to be a real, like, I got to be careful because they'll probably sue me or something, but you got to imagine how low of an ethical foundation a person has to have to be a health insurance executive. Like, you go to work deliberately intending to harm people because that's how you make money. The less help you provide, the more money you can squeeze from them, and then the less money you have to give back, the more your profits go up and you get your bonuses. And it's one of those jobs that is just truly like unbelievable that we tolerate it in our world. So people said, dude, this is too much. What's just all this damn crazy bias and all your bullshit. I'm paraphrasing, but that was a few comments in a YouTube video I did, similar to like the way I'm being right now. And so I was like, you know what? Yeah, of course. I mean, and I had intended to do this too, but also like it made me realize, like, yeah, a version without the bullshit would be wise. We should do that. We're going to go through that a little bit right now. And then we're going to get to the part of this show where Cenk is confronted for being a union buster by a caller, which is really entertaining and fun. That'll be the meat of today's episode, really. So I finally finished this. I actually did this little green design. You see that up there? That's kind of fun. I don't know why I thought it needed that, but it stayed, so I left it in. So now on baldontheinside.substack.com, we now have a new piece just published today, October 18th, for everybody to enjoy. This is called Two Versions, One Truth, Evidence for My Claims About the Young Turks. Subheading, see for yourself. Documents, emails, articles, tweets supporting the claims I'm making about Cenk Uygur's employment practices and the two versions of why Young Turks workers unionized. So, as you recall, since I just said it, there are two versions that are now being bandied about. If Cenk could have his way, I'm sure the only version that anyone ever heard was the lie that it was a political ploy by his congressional opponents. But because I believe in the principles that they sell to their audience, that you're supposed to be honest and you should tell the truth and that you should speak truth to power. And this is like the stuff that I believed in 2013 when I sold my business to move across the country to work for the Young Turks. There's a strange history to that whole thing. It completely bothered me that not only did I have to go through this whole thing without health insurance and health care and any benefits except for the final 2 months of this 14-month stretch. So I had to start a union just to try to get some to be able to go to a doctor at the Young Turks. Then on the way out, as the union busting becomes public, the guy lies about me. The guy attacks me and my friends for how it started by saying that we were either manipulated or that we were in on it somehow, which is what you have to conclude based on their version. I think that Cenk thinks we were manipulated. I don't necessarily believe that he believes we were in on it, although I wouldn't be surprised if he suspected that, but how can you prove that? So that's based on the emails that he had sent, which were made public by Alex Thompson, the writer of the Politico piece that's in here. So There's 4 articles that you could read if you'd like to get a baseline for this. If you would rather not hear from me, let's click on my handy little navigation link. These give a really good background. There's a Huffington Post and in these Times article, article in the New Republic, and one in Politico. The Politico one has links to the writer's Twitter, Alex Thompson's Twitter, that has the postings of the emails Cenk sent to his unionizing workers. So we'll actually, yeah. Well, okay, all right. So this whole thing is going to serve what I hope is, I'll just scroll down a little bit. You can see kind of the intro. The intro does have, I mean, I can't say that it's like completely without personality or editorial. I suppose I could have tried to make it as sterile as possible, but the purpose of this article I have written here, there are 2 versions of a story: why workers at the Young Turks unionized. My hope is that the following information will enable you to assess which version is true: the story I'm telling, working conditions, or the one Young Turks founder and CEO Cenk Uygur told, political opponents. Whether you already have an opinion or are just finding this, I ask you to put on your objectivity cap and consider the following information carefully. I won't pretend to be objective, but that's why I'm wearing my objectivity cap for this one. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't know. I write here in a block pull quote or something. I would be glad to provide full access to all my documents to a reputable journalist. TYT could also provide the same documents. So I'm using information that the Young Turks has. All this information that's in this piece is data sourced from Gusto records, invoices, emails, like contract. It's all stuff that they have. Nothing is fabricated. Nothing is made up. It would be rather stupid and risky and dumb to make it all up. Yeah, I'll just finish reading this, I guess. Why the hell not? My previous piece detailing why being classified so as to receive health insurance. Oh, God damn it. I wrote this wrong. I got to fix this. Fuck. Okay, so it makes it seem like I get them. I got to change that. That's very important. So as to not receive shit. Okay, hold on. Okay, I put the word no in there. That's such an important word. Shit. All right. I guess sometimes there are benefits to the fact that nobody looks at the shit you do. So my previous piece detailing why being classified so as to receive no health insurance, paid personal days, paid holidays, and bonus, among other benefits, motivated myself and coworkers to unionize at the Young Turks was written in conjunction with the documentary Tell the Truth, Cenk, to counter the narrative Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, and the Young Turks put out that the union originated as a ploy by Nancy Pelosi and her allies to damage Cenk's 2019-2020 congressional campaign. In addition to evidence, it contains emotion, a biased perspective, and overwrought analysis, as does much of what I've communicated on my podcast. Linking to TYT-related videos and stuff here. I'm wondering if David Sirota knows that Cenk is a union buster. Cenk doesn't think he's a union buster, which actually adds a very interesting wrinkle to this whole drama thing here. So,
are you a union buster?
No, I'm definitely not a union buster.
Back to the story. My personality isn't small. I am prone to an off-putting forwardness and the unusual nature of a former employee. Go away, share quote thing. Got it. Fucking how did I just get it to go away? The right click? No. Okay, I'll just read it. My personality isn't small. I am prone to an off-putting forwardness, and the unusual nature of a former employee making claims in such a manner could give one reason to be dismissive. While I will defend and expand upon the interpretive factors and will continue to be upfront about the emotional nature of this project, I fully agree that a presentation absent all that is an appropriate thing to do. Emotions are a drag. I get it. Hey kids, I'm here to talk to you about emotions. I'm at the gymnasium, inspiring teens. Wouldn't that be a great way to make a living? The nature, that's not in the article. Here we go, back to the article. The nature of this project is about trust and credibility, so I'm understanding why some might be skeptical of mine. Totally fair. I have a lot of first impressions to make. I have no reason to lie or fabricate evidence. Doing so is unethical and would invite rightful civil and or criminal inquiry far beyond the already uncomfortable level of legal risk I'm at. Telling the story honestly is stressful enough. Why would I make any of this up? Why would I do this if it wasn't true? The conclusion contains the crux of the matter. Two versions of an event. One is true, another isn't. Okay, that's the intro. I hope that's not too like I'm trying to influence the jury kind of feeling. People go, oh, this isn't really. But then the rest of it is all very just like, here's information, here's data. This is what happened at this point. There's a couple little interpretive moments here. But this is the like the evidence. This isn't evidence for anything, but this is their claim. So you can see their claim, their version. So I'm showing the communication that they put out that shows that why when I say what their version is, that I'm basing that on stuff they actually said. We'll do it a little bit here. So TYT's version. Workers were manipulated into unionizing by Cenk Uygur's political opponents as a ploy to harm his 2019-2020 congressional campaign for CA25 special election to replace Katie Hill against establishment favorite Christy Smith. I'd actually put on Twitter, this was written wrong. I just had it written to replace Christy Smith, and I didn't think about it at all. I just had, like, my proofreading stopped after that for some reason. I didn't, and I saw that, and I was like, oh, shit. I think I put that on Twitter, and I was like, oh, fuck, I think I should have read that again. But yes, this is accurate. To replace Katie Hill against establishment favorite Christy Smith. All right. So I kind of just go through the beats here where TYT Union came forward with first they came forward on the 12th, by the way, was when their first tweet went up. But the union busting became public on February 21st, 2020, with the TYT Union and IATSE both putting out statements about the Young Turks rejecting voluntary recognition, refusing to say yes to card check. Young Turks came out and said, no, that's not they say that's inaccurate. This is some bullshit right here where they go, I can't highlight this, but they say, we offered to recognize the union upon completion of an expedited arbitrator supervised secret ballot election within days. The union did not even respond to our proposal. So they want to recognize, they want to call it, this whole time was theme. One of the patterns you'll notice is that they are constantly insisting that what they were doing is voluntarily recognizing the union, even after like the second election. Cenk uses that phrasing, which is complete bullshit. You didn't voluntarily recognize. If you said no to it at card check, you lost your chance to do the voluntary recognition. After that, it's involuntary. It's not how it works.
Actual voluntary recognition marks the start of the negotiation phase, but TYT refused to negotiate because they refused to recognize, insisting instead on a new election at a later date, buying themselves time during which management would employ the array of coercive and deceptive union busting techniques. Delay is an extremely common union busting tactic. This guy here, Martin J. Levitt, he was a professional union buster for 30 years, but his conscience finally caught up to him for all the damage he did.
But, so this is the first indication of the conspiracy, is this yellow highlight here. The fact that IATSE has failed to respond to TYT, instead opting to issue misleading statements, suggests that there are other motives at play. I remember reading that and being like, what the fuck are they talking about? What other motives? I want health insurance. I didn't like the way I was treated at that company. There was severe ethical boundaries being violated, and not to mention a culture of incredible disrespect that other people felt. What other motives? Think about it. Think about being working full-time hours for somebody who's calling you part-time so that they can save your money that you're earning. Think of how disrespectful you have to, how zero, honestly. You don't respect somebody. You don't do that to somebody you respect. Have someone come work for you, and you're going to paperwork label them part-time, but they're going to work 40 hours a week, and you're keeping their Labor Day money. You're keeping their holiday money. You're keeping the money they earned. So you can kind of get a sense for the kind of respect that Cenk Uygur offers his workers in his workplace. So then Cenk, on the same day, February 21st, put out this tweet. Oh, look, why am I doing this whole thing? This is a lot of this is in the movie too, by the way. Oh, look, in a totally uncoordinated way, I'm sure the candidate that IATSE is currently canvassing for puts out the same false attack against us. And this is on the day that she's participating in the only forum she's ever come to. I wonder if she'll bring it up. So genuine. So he's being sarcastic. IATSE had endorsed Christy Smith. IATSE is a huge organization. I found out about that December, maybe January, probably. I'm not even sure when. It never seemed relevant to me. But it is the foothold that the Young Turks used for putting out this suspicious narrative, right? So, like, if you're just kind of casually looking at this, and this is explored in the film a bunch, a lot of people use the word fishy. A lot of people pointed to this because they still trust Cenk here, right? Like, this is the whole point of this video and this whole production is that Cenk knew that these people trusted him, and he was willing to take advantage of that to hide who he really is, which is a guy that uses classification to deny workers benefits when they're working full time. That's the whole thing here. He'd rather be known as a union buster than a guy who does that stuff. Because if he had to explain to his audience, oh yeah, my workers did have a genuine union here, they would say, well, what were their grievances? Why were they unionizing? And those are questions he does not want to answer. So I'm going to fucking answer him. That's what this whole thing is. But the fact that IATSE had endorsed Smith gives a little credence to the idea that maybe something was being politically motivated. And I address that in this. This is sort of a interpretive sidebar, so this isn't super dispassionate. But I feel like if you read this and you hear this, you'll agree that I'm being very fair. And I go way out of my way to be very fair about this, because what happens next after... So, in short, they were right to be suspicious because something strange was occurring during a very unusual circumstance, but they weren't right to proceed without fact-checking, right? So, as I write here, IATSE endorsing Christy Smith is a separate issue from whether I deserved health insurance and paid time off for full-time video editing, or whether other TYT employees deserve the freedom to collectively bargain for better working conditions by joining the union that represents professional production and post-production workers. As shown below, IATSE was receptive in 2018 to the Young Turks workers' first entreaty. Love that word, entreaty. And again, when we reached out in the fall of 2019. So we were in touch with IATSE twice. I wasn't there for the 2018 round. But that's written in the articles, by the way. And the workers showed emails to the writer of the article to prove that these happened. And IATSE was receptive. There was no indications that they were politically motivated. Nobody knew Cenk was going to run for Congress in a special election to replace Katie Hill against establishment favorite Christy Smith. Nobody knew that. Yet twice IATSE was down for helping the Young Turks workers unionize, and only the workers that qualify for production and post-production labor. They don't take everybody. That comes up in a second here. I said I wasn't going to go through this, and now I'm just going through it, so whatever. That said, I write, and I bolded that said, considering the unfair treatment Team Cenk had received from mainstream sources, paranoia was justifiable given the fog of war of an intense and novel political campaign. But before going public with insinuations of conspiracy, the proper next step was fact-checking. Did I press escape? Does that get rid of the share quote? That is so irritating. It's just driving me nuts. Not all stories are confirmable, but very few are this confirmable. In this case, original sources were feet away, or in my case, a DM away. This did not happen. They didn't check. This is critical. Okay, this is critical right here. Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks company account, Cenk Uygur, put out information that they did not fact check to their audience about the origination of the union at the Young Turks. If it was a sincere mistake, let's just say that's what happened, and then they learn, they go, oh, wait a minute, this is actually like a genuine thing our workers did, and it's really kind of crappy that we just smeared them publicly. Because it's not just that they said that our integrity was up for grabs because we were stupid enough to be duped by his political opponents. As I've said in a previous podcast, I'm very good at sniffing out bullshit. I think I said if I could sniff bullshit at the airport, if they made it illegal, I could get a job sniffing it. Yeah, anyway, that was a funny line. Sorry, this is how I podcast. I'm terrible at it. I would have been suspicious if all of a sudden after my boss runs for Congress, people get in touch with me and my friends and try to start a union out of nowhere. That would have been really freaking suspicious to me. So there's that integrity part of it, but also workers, myself included, spoke to journalists. They showed emails to the journalists that investigated, that did those 4 articles. So if you accept that the Young Turks story is the case, then, and this is not a big logical leap, I think you'll agree. And if you think I'm wrong, let me know. Tell me where I'm missing this here. But in order for TYT's version to be true, that means that the workers all lied to the journalists when they spoke to them about their working conditions and the reasons they were unionizing. So Cenk has to prove that I lied. Cenk has to prove that the other workers lied. Now, they all did it anonymously, except me, because they were afraid of retaliation. Cenk Uygur fired someone from the Young Turks organizing committee, the bargaining unit, the same person who he threatened at their first captive audience meeting, which is written about in the Huffington Post article. So in order to believe their version, you have to accept that we lied and that we fabricated the emails that we used to prove that we had been in touch with IATSE beforehand. Otherwise, Cenk Uygur's version falls apart. If what we're saying is true, what I'm saying is true, really. So keep that in mind. They didn't fact check this because they didn't want to. Oh, that's what I was saying. If it was a mistake, let's say they were just all heated up because of the campaign, and in Anna's defense, she took a ton of flack for this. This was a really stressful time for her, and I've seen her say stuff about that. I could just tell by working there until early January when I got fired, but everybody was a little on edge because of this whole thing. It's a big, unusual situation. And it would have made, she deserves to be called out. She's in this film because she didn't she didn't fact check this. But I'm kind of going a step further and saying, well, things were intense. She should probably have to address that. But also she trusted her source, from what I gather. It seems like she believed the story that she was sharing, which means that Cenk let her deceive his audience on his behalf because he knew she trusted him. Her loyalty got her a role in a union busting documentary. And that's the reward she got for her loyalty to Cenk, because she's a very good soldier for him. You know what I mean? They have a long history together and a, more overlapped kind of relationship than most professional partnerships / he's her boss. It's a strange one. It's a bit different than your usual employer type thing, but that's fine. I know everybody's been on Anna's case about her ideological shifts of late. So I tweeted out my role at the time, and they've known me for years. I'm just summarizing this. So I was willing to talk, and they could have checked the facts. They just had to talk to people that were in the same room as them, or they could have DM'd me, and I would have told them why we started the union and what happened. They didn't check the facts. That's a huge ethical lapse, and this is why, Anna's in the film. She affirmed the entire thing. Her imprimatur, to use another big word. So Anna tweets out Cenk's version. She retweets it, saying that she felt extremely uncomfortable with IATSE's endorsement of Cenk's congressional opponent, who does not share our progressive values. Well, Anna, does the progressive values we're speaking of here include using classification trickery to deny someone working full-time the ability to go see a doctor and deny them paid days off? My measly ass $173.04 for fucking 8 hours of a day off. It sucked, man. Other people at work get paid for a Christmas holiday and then you don't. Just put yourself in your own workplace and feel like that sucks. This is the fairness shit that we all kind of just expect that we want from our world, and the slightest bit of fairness. Just treat me with the same disrespect you treat other people. This is one of Anna's bigger tweets. I think that this one kind of nails it. She says she's personally supportive of unions. Well, let me read it. She says, while I'm personally supportive of unions, comma, that's a great way to say I'm not for this union. This feels like it's done in bad faith. The fact that this all blew up on the day of Cenk's debate is also extremely suspicious. So she introduces the word suspicious and bad faith, that there's some bad faith happening here. And she also cites her source for this is her feelings, it seems like. She says it feels. Same up here. She says, I feel extremely uncomfortable. I don't know. You could have checked with the source of information instead of going off the lies Cenk was telling and your feelings. But Then she tweets this out. This is a response to somebody. She writes, the only thing I can say as a worker, me and several of my colleagues knew nothing about this union until this week. They claim they're representing the will of the majority of TYT employees, including producers. I highlighted that part in yellow. But we never even got a chance to vote or share what we feel. There's that word feel again. I thought I had too many feelings. If there's a day where I can talk, Anna and I can have an honest conversation with each other about this experience, that would be really fascinating. I'm a nobody. Nobody gives a shit about me. But I'm very curious where she's going to end up once she gets wind of this whole project, because like I feel like she has the integrity to respond. I don't think Cenk does. Cenk clearly has a lot to lose if he actually acknowledges it, which is what we're about to get to with the Union Buster denial, which is freaking fascinating. But I don't know. It's interesting. I feel Anna catches so much scrutiny on the internet that it's got to be just dizzying in a lot of ways. So yeah. Anyway, so she writes here in the yellow part, they claim they're representing the will of the majority of the TYT employees, including producers. Not true. Never true. Couldn't be true. Impossible to be true. Okay. IATSE does not represent producers, hosts, executives, marketing, office personnel, assistants, unpaid interns, or unpaid mods, or human resources. Only post-production and production. Thus, the group of people that joined the union were editors, graphics, and studio technicians, here as Cenk acknowledges on his tweet, April 9th, 2020. We're going to get back to this unpaid mods thing in a moment here. So there's a reason that's got a link. I'm not going to go too deep on that, but we will probably talk about it at a later date in more detail too. So anyway, this post here shows a couple things. Cenk clarifying, not that he was doing this in response to Anna's tweet. This is like 2 months later, mind you. But just that IATSE doesn't represent those other groups. This could not have been true. This one Anna put up here. So somehow she was getting bad information. She was sharing bad information, and she wasn't fact checking it. But like I said, this whole experience was really weird and really intense. And that's kind of like, just to kind of cap it up, because I don't think I quite said it. But like, if they had said, now there's a union, we've been under assault from the mainstream media constantly. New York Times smeared this. A lot of this is in the movie. Like the New York Times smeared us, CNN, LA Times. We had to Bernie Sanders endorsement, unendorsement. We're kind of spun up in this fight for Congress. Now there's a union. What the hell? We're going to take a little time to confirm what this is, and we're going to make a decision about the union. I would have been like, well, I know the truth, but okay, fine. You know what? They're right. It's a pretty weird situation overall. Give them a week or two, do some fact checking, check it, and then tell your audience the truth about the union. You could probably even spin it a little bit. You might not have motivated me to come completely out with all this crap all this time later. Or like I was saying earlier, if they did the no fact checking mistake because of the fog of war, right? They were just caught up in the battle. And then like a couple months goes by and they go, wait a minute, we really did kind of just tell our audience that something that wasn't true. They would then come forward and say, guys, we got an admission. We're embarrassed. During the campaign, as you know, it was pretty intense, and we made a mistake. We put out information about the origin of the union here that was not correct. It wasn't true. We regret that. We're going to make a statement, and then probably some sort of peaceful offering type statement from TYT Union, because they generally want to go along to get along. They didn't do that either, right? They covered it up, in fact. And Anna went on the Nomiki Konst show that summer, and she air quoted union busting. I don't know the video of it right here.
When Cenk was running for Congress, which was one of the most difficult periods I'm sure he's had to go through, but it was hard for me too, because, I know Cenk on a much more personal level. Like, I've worked with him closely for 13 years. So I know who he is as a person, and I know his heart. And I know that he, the biggest thing that I've ever criticized him for is that he's ridiculously forgiving and nice, and people take advantage of it, right? And so when he was running for Congress, unsurprisingly, all of these bad faith attacks happened. They brought up his old blogs again and what he had written, and, they called him a misogynist. They claimed he was like all sorts of ridiculous things. I mean, some of them were so outlandish that I can't believe that anyone would buy it. And so the attacks start that way. And then finally, all of a sudden, there's like this talk of this Twitter page pops up out of nowhere, right? And it's TYT Union, and no one had any idea what that was, or what's going on. Is this real? And one of the people following that TYT Union page was Nancy Pelosi, who very clearly despises Cenk, and was doing anything and everything possible to get to ensure that Christy Smith would beat him in the Democratic primary. So understandably, like, Cenk's going to be suspicious of that. Like, what is this? And why is Nancy Pelosi following it? And so he brought it up internally, and then it turned into like this ridiculous story about union busting, right? Now, let me be clear. And by the way, this particular union had endorsed Christy Smith. That was already on the record, who, by the way, voted in California against labor rights over and over again. So, like, of course, people who are in the know, who are paying attention, are going to be suspicious. And it turned into a union busting story. And now they're unionized, and we understood, like, by the way, I'm not even in management.
There's a screen cap of it in one of the other articles. And Cenk referred to it as a bumpy start later on.
Our relationship got off to a bumpy start in the beginning, but that was due to a lot of different reasons, having nothing to do with how we treat employees here. And but I'm really glad.
And I've caught him saying a couple little things about it, but very, very little addressing. There was one quote where I saved where he said something like, when I was running for Congress, I got raked over the grill or for something that basically wasn't true or something like that. He kind of made a comment, and like the word basically was doing a lot of work in that comment. I shouldn't be saying it because I don't have it exactly in front of me, but he's barely talked about it at all. And I talked about it more than Cenk in the Nomiki Konst interview in July of 2020. So, okay, there's a bit of deception in Cenk's tweet here. He says that they decided to join IATSE today. Not true. The decision was made before. It wasn't done that day. That Cenk forced his workers to go through a second election after a harrowing 2-month union busting campaign, where they withheld raises and bonuses, where they fired people, where they challenged the composition of the bargaining unit, captive audience meetings, captive audience emails, union busting emails, pressure. Who knows what kind of conversations happened internally in terms of pressure. So they didn't decide today. They decided months prior to that. Then he says, we voluntarily recognize the union. You didn't. You involuntarily were forced to recognize the union. You were you had to recognize it out of against your will. This is a lie. This is bullshit. Maybe this is not a precise lie, but this is bullshit. And I'm also including it because the TYT union themselves made clear. Cenk's tweet was at 7 p.m., 6:59 p.m. And then an hour later at 8:09 p.m., TYT Union put out, we voted again. I highlighted the again with yellow. And then they used the phrase officially recognized, which is accurate. Young Turks did recognize it after that, but it was not voluntary recognition. I think this speaks to a pattern of Cenk wanting to control the narrative here, which is also partially why I'm doing this whole project, is because I don't like the fact that his voice is the one that has told this story so far. By far, he's got the biggest reach with Anna's imprimatur. That just means like agreeing and then signal boosting it. And so I'm using my agency, as I did to wake up the union drive because I wanted health insurance and paid days off. And I also using my agency to tell this story. It's a fascinating story. It's a weird story. And I believe that there's an injustice here that can be corrected by the truth. And that's what this whole thing is. And man, I'm probably going to end up homeless. I hate the money side of all of it. It's just so fucking humiliating to have to be like, and I need money, but like, Jesus, patreon.com/winners and losers and everybody. And there's other ways to donate if you look in the description, my link tree. Yeah, I just get depressed thinking about money. Okay. All right. So we're jumping around a slight bit here. So we go back to 2020. This is the big 10 tweet screed that TYT put out. And they finish with this phrase here, a ploy to intimidate us. They say 10 out of 10 here. If IATSE doesn't agree It's obvious they never had the support of our employees, and this was all a ploy to intimidate us and the people who work at TYT. We emailed IATSE because we needed help curbing our boss Cenk Uygur's behavior. They were kind and receptive and patient, and we asked them for help because we wanted to unionize so that, for me, in my case, and I know that my friends were motivated, they wanted me to have health insurance. They felt like it was unfair that I was classified so as to receive zero benefits. Thousands of dollars. The 20 days off alone is $3,460. I have a detail here about the bonus. If I got a whole year's bonus, I would have gotten an extra $2,400 or so, like thousands of dollars here. So, then there's articles that kind of get into it. I just wanted to make sure that people saw that there's these Dave Jamieson in Huffington Post wrote about it. Also, he spoke to staffers who said their first organizing discussions date back more than 2 years. That's the 2018 time period. Kim Kelly, who interviewed me for this by email, wrote about Uygur accused IATSE of trying to sabotage his congressional run, and then kind of goes on a little bit more. And she says, when he called the timing of the unionization announcement into question on Twitter, intimating a conspiracy against him because IATSE had previously endorsed his opponent, organizers offered a quick rejoinder. Thompson, she writes, this is just the bottom here, recalls conversations about IATSE drive beginning 3 or 4 months before Uygur announced his candidacy. I actually kind of wish I could amend that to be about like 5 months. It actually was a little bit sooner than 3 or 4. Alex Thompson's political piece is very good. He also refers to it as a political conspiracy, writing allegations of a political conspiracy to sink Uygur's recent congressional campaign and at least 2 1,500-word plus screeds that Uygur emailed to staff arguing against employees forming a union, which were obtained by Politico. One NLRB complaint over the termination of a pro-union employee is still pending. There are 2 of those NLRB complaints. Let's just fast forward to one of them, which is not in this article. What the fuck did I not? It's in this one. It's right. What the fuck? All right, right there. This is in the credits and sources post for the first 46 minutes. God. I had a better shot of this that's up closer that we could have looked at. I'll put it on screen if I edit this in post. But this is for violating Section 7 of the NLRA, National Labor Relations Act. So, like, just to refer to what we got jumped around a little bit. This is the little snippet from the Politico piece by Alex Thompson. The NLRB complaint over the termination of pro-union employee is still pending. So they had to rescind like dictates that were impeding workers' rights to organize. And that notice hung on the wall for 60 days. Nobody at TYT reported on it at all. They didn't deem that newsworthy enough that their boss, the progressive Cenk Uygur, had gotten caught by the government violating labor laws. And that wasn't a news story. So, talking to Alex Thompson directly, although he doesn't quote him directly for this one, but I know he's quoted in this article a bunch. So Uygur also suggested that the union drive was part of an effort to undermine his recent campaign for Congress in California's 25th district, in which the union had endorsed one of his Democratic opponents. Uygur finished 4th in the top 2 primary on March 3rd. Uygur cited that dynamic as one of the irregularities, quote unquote, when asked why he did not support card check. So he chalked it up to an irregularity. Is this word irregularity is almost like the closest we get to Cenk acknowledging that something untoward happened regarding his union busting. It's written about in these articles. There's all kinds of other information about it. Even Cenk's own words, by the way. And this is relevant to the union busting stuff that we're going to get into in a little bit. The collar thing, because that's going to be its own sort of story. Cenk's emails to unionizing workers. So remember, the purpose of this article is to establish the proof of the narrative that they're telling. I'm proving my own narrative by proving the claims I'm making about my employment conditions. That's what the rest of the article is about. But the first part of the article is about TYTs. So then we get to my version. We'll get into that another day. How about? Because there's just so much. I have all this information from Gusto Records. TYT's part-time threshold is 30 hours. I'm just going to show you this one real quick. I was working 8-hour days here while called part-time. This is what I'm saying. You don't respect somebody. You don't do this to someone you respect. If you want to think of a boss and like what would be something a disrespectful boss would do, well, you'd say, I could come up with lots of stuff, but well, I don't know, maybe like calling someone part-time so that they don't get any benefits and then they work full-time hours. You don't do it to someone you respect. That's who Cenk Uygur is. That's who this guy is. Okay. He didn't give a shit if I had health care. It's crazy. So these emails, and this is a little interpretive here, obviously, as far as I'm kind of like what I'm choosing to highlight and stuff. So I write that a little bit here that this is subjective, but we don't have the full emails. Unfortunately, I wish we did. This is just the stuff that Alex Thompson has on his Twitter. And so you see the yellow highlights here. I'm going to read them down here at the bottom. I blocked them out. So Cenk, as I wrote, the version Cenk seems to believe makes no room for the agency of the workers as contrasted to my version of why we unionized. That is, his assertion is that we were manipulated by dishonest outside actors and were not acting of our own interests nor the interests of the company, but were duped by a third-party entity with bad or at least hidden intentions. Block 1, Cenk wrote, before IATSE came in. This is what I highlighted in yellow. I write, in fact, as shown in the articles HuffPo, Politico, workers invited IATSE's help, which is a necessary step in any new union joining larger umbrella org. Little bit nitpicky, but he says IATSE came in. No, that gives them the agency, right? No, workers invited IATSE to come in. We needed help dealing with our boss's horrible employment practices. He writes, that some folks got you to believe that being adversarial with management is the right thing to do. Nobody got us to believe anything besides our boss's public advocacy for unionizing. Play.
We've got to have collective bargaining so you all have power.
The working class should have power. Are we allowed to stand up for working class people? The answer is yes. Yes, you are.
You don't have collective bargaining, and you want to go into your boss and say, all right, I'd like a pay raise. You're going to have absolutely no ability to do that. The only way
I had to go ask my boss, and now, to be fair, I asked it through the HR person, but that's asking your boss, if I could get health insurance. I wasn't even going for a pay raise. I wanted to go to a doctor. I wanted paid days off. I wanted benefits. This is less than even just a fucking pay raise.
Any boss would take you seriously is whether you could bring everybody in together.
They say they support organizing.
We need to have stronger unions in this country. We need to restore power back to the average citizens in this country.
We need unionized work, right? We need labor protections. We had those protections. They've been rolled back throughout the decades because of the aggressiveness of the anti-labor movement.
The wealth gap is so big. The thing that had the most hope to close it was unions.
Workers at TYT have organized for a voice on the job. So there's a bunch of Cenk being hypocritical and TYT people talking and stuff. Yeah, this tweet though here, right here, wild bear eating man on the loose. Justin J. Joseph's one. Thank you, sir. Amazing how crushing it must have been for the crew that films these allegedly progressives talking about unions and worker rights day after day, only to then have them reject their own employees' union. Yeah, well said, man. And think about my case, working there for no benefits. I came from the TYT audience originally. I was a paying member, like starting in 2008 or 9 or something. It goes way back. I had this like deep history of the company, and so yeah, it's like it was pretty crushing. And like, yeah, I knew it wasn't a high respect environment. I'd already seen the sausage get made there, but the classification stuff was just like crossing a fucking line. That's kind of what this whole thing is like, I'm just built differently, you know? The guy crossed the line the moment he did that. And that set in motion a day where this shit would come out. Whether it would be, and I got to say the story was, yeah, they had me classified, and then I brought it to their attention, and they fixed it. That would have been rad. I would have been like, you know what? No problem. Down for it. They gave me a big check for all the holidays and the healthcare. They made right. Could have done that. There's a storyline. There's a timeline where that could have been the story. But yeah, not only were these workers, people there tend to, not that everybody there is like a true believer of Cenk's whole project and mission, you know, such and such, but you care about the politics. You care about making hopefully a better world when where progressive values rise to the forefront and all the craziness that's in the politics. And that, just like this guy says here, it must have been crushing that films these alleged progressives talking about unions and worker rights day after day. God, yeah, that really captures it. So he writes, well, just to get back to this, so Cenk should explain who the some folks are when he is asked about this. So who's he referring to? Who are the some folks? He seems to know what happened. Let's get the guy's proof. Let's get some evidence, Cenk. Come on, Columbia Law School lawyer. Here's Cenk's words again. This is why they don't want me talking to you, because I'm going to tell you things that are true. That is super important for you to know. Again, please ask around and verify for yourself. Don't just trust me or some union rep you've probably met twice in your life. So he's indicating here, I write, Cenk indicates that the union reps were met. The union reps we met were withholding information and insists what he is saying is true. I only experienced honesty, patience, and kindness from the union reps. I never got a whiff that they were pulling a fast one on anybody. And also as if like, this is why they don't want me talking to you. Like as if Cenk is the arbiter of honest information in this whole thing. He's already put out a lie. These emails went out, I don't know the date, but this was like before the April 9th election. So this was probably the first week of April, as I'm guessing, when these emails went out. So he's already put out a lie about their integrity, that they were manipulated into this ploy, right? That the whole thing was a ploy. Other motives at play. Anna called it bad faith, suspicious. They're getting shit from audience members. They know that people are buying the company line.
Confusion and suspicion spread like tater tots in a food fight. While no shortage of randos made the mistake of trusting Cenk, so too did those with platforms of their own. A few examples from the Young Turks cinematic universe stood out. Jeff Waldorf of Waldorf Nation expressed suspicion and understandable confusion. The Humanist reports Mike Figueredo withdrew his support for TYT Union when the conspiracy reached him. He's against cahoots, so much so he stayed on management's side even after a worker from the very union he was talking about showed up in his mentions. Fair enough. Trusting a boss you know over a worker you don't is an understandable bias, especially when there's money and ambition on the line. Hey, I'm human too. When the eclectic radical added some clear-thinking perspective, including the right-wing nature of busting a union,
I used to be a Republican.
Mike remained where he was most comfortable. Sahil Habibi is the progressive voice.
It's progressive voice.
He's the TMZ of political punditry.
Who's the TMZ of political punditry?
Anna loves him.
I love him.
She loves his show.
And I love his show.
The Harvey Levin of political punditry tweeted, "Poor Cenk got snaked by his employees." And in a video titled TYT's Cenk Uygur recognizes TYT Union after air quote union busting controversy.
You know how fucking brutal that felt? Just kind of like what that tweet said, for these workers to be on the inside of this. And I'm not just making this up because, like, who do you think I get some of my information from? You know what I'm saying? I have good sources on this. They felt incredibly insulted. I'm not speaking for every single person. I can't do that. I felt insulted because I was even though I wasn't there for the union busting, I got laid off, but I was there for the origination. That's why this whole project is about that. And so Cenk's already put out the lie here. And Anna's already helped spread it. This conspiracy bullshit. He's had captive audience meetings, which are now illegal in California. It's a $500 fine, which is bullshit. but you can get busted for those now. Other states have them illegal too. He threatened someone at the meeting. He threw papers. That's written in Huffington Post. He fired that person the morning after his election loss, which is dubious ethically for campaign finance reasons. Business decisions. Not like a Bobcat Goldthwait off. But sorry. Okay. Now my brain's just going off on a wacky tangent inside. Business decisions and political decisions, they made a big stink of this. Is in the film. They make it a big stink about how they had to separate those. The editorial control of the company went to Anna and Judith, their director of programming or something like that.
Mid-November 2019. We're talking ethics. Since very few politicians are also daily talk show hosts, Cenk's surprise run for Congress raised legitimate concerns.
Something that's important to me is our credibility here at the Young Turks as a media company.
Cenk assures the audience he's going above and beyond.
When I'm a host on the program, I can't comment on my district or my race. Not only, look, actually, legally you can, but I don't want to.
And I don't want you to either, because
That's right.
I think it's important for us to, maintain our credibility and to, remain objective when it comes to reporting the facts.
100% right.
So who decides what airs?
I handed off editorial control of the show to Anna. She already was executive producer of the Young Turks, so in that sense, we were already 90% of the way there. But also, Judith, who's a wonderful head of programming for us, now has editorial control over other parts of the network that are not the Young Turks.
Hey, you got to do the right thing.
We've got to do the right thing.
Even if you don't have to.
Even if we don't have to, we should do the right thing, and we're going to.
And so Cenk allegedly had separated any editorial influence over his company because he became a politician. Yet, even when he told Matt Taibbi and Katie Halper that even Matt Taibbi phrased it as getting kicked in the balls, that TYT's aggressive investigative reporters are unlike other, like Michael Bloomberg is kind of who they're contrasting to, because there aren't that many examples, contemporary at least, of like media company owners also being politicians. I'm sure there's probably more than we realize. They're all podcasters now, fucking Ted Cruz and shit. Like, what? But as Cenk told Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi that he, like,
A month later, Cenk goes on the Useful Idiots podcast with Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi. At the time, fellow media titan turned politician Michael Bloomberg had been criticized for his policy forbidding Bloomberg reporters from covering their boss's campaign. Asked about his approach to similar ethical issues, Cenk adopts a contrasting tack.
And I've given over editorial control to Anna for the flagship show, The Young Turks, for the TYT network. And we've told our reporters, you are allowed to cover the campaign, and you're definitely allowed to cover it negatively.
Negatively? Well, gosh, that sounds ethical.
So you cover it any way you like. I mean, I'm super proud of our very, very independent, strong-minded reporters at TYT Investigates that broke us some wonderful stories. So they're free to investigate anyone they like.
Even ball kicking?
So unlike Mike Bloomberg, if one of your people decided to just sort of kick you in the balls at the Young Turks, that'd be fine. That'd be fine, right? They're allowed to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
He welcomes their ball kicks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. They're pretty tough on folks. So,
right.
But yes, we're independent media, so no holds barred.
No holds barred, huh? He said no holds barred. He made it seem like his company, and he's like, oh, I'm not sure I want them looking into it. To suggest that if there's something untoward that could be reported by someone in the Young Turks company, they would come out with it. And then he does union busting that includes no fact checking and lying about the workers' integrity, and not a fucking peep from anybody there. Nobody brought it up. Nobody reached out to me. Nothing. So I think there's dubious ethical boundaries being crossed there. Anna Kasparian bringing Cenk on, calling him Uygur. Our guest today is Cenk Uygur, who is running.
But don't worry.
Like, this is not like one of those cheesy, like, here with us now is congressional candidate for California's 25th district, Cenk Uygur. Thank you for joining us, Cenk.
Why? Are you saying we did that before?
Joining me now is candidate for California's 25th district congressional seat, Cenk Uygur.
Welcome, Anna. Thank you.
I'm welcoming you.
That's right.
He's a guest on this show.
All right.
Joining us now is congressional candidate for California's 25th district, Cenk Uygur.
Hey, Anna, how you doing?
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Lots of good stuff.
Joining us now is congressional candidate for California's 25th district, Cenk Uygur. Cenk, welcome back.
All right, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. A congressional candidate for California's 25th district, Cenk Uygur. Cenk, welcome back on the show.
Thank you.
So, yeah, because we had to legally. But anyway.
Yes. Okay.
They did it for legal reasons.
It was like, but okay, they had to do that shit. Fine. He's still able to book himself on the damage report. But then firing somebody the morning after the election loss tells me that business decisions, because that would have looked bad before the campaign. This guy's up here busting unions and chopping heads off of unionizing workers, and that's right. You don't do that before the campaign, before the election. You wait till the morning after the loss, after you only get 6.6% of the vote. So anyway, that went off a bit of a tangent around that one. But like Cenk is pretending to hold on to the truth here. Don't just trust me, ask around, he says. The last people in the fucking world that would trust what this guy is saying are the people that he had just lied about publicly. My stupid earbud cord pulled on me. Okay, I keep going. God, this is... I might have to skip the Trump stuff. Fucking hell. It's true, I write. We had all met Cenk... Oh, yeah, so this is in response to, don't just trust me or some union rep you've probably met twice in your life. So here's a little sass from me. It's true we had all met Cenk many more times than the union reps. This is why we feared retaliation from him and secretly organized to avoid being punished. Yeah, we knew Cenk better than the union reps, that's for sure. Why do you think we knew we shouldn't say anything about it until we came forward? We didn't think he would bust the union. That just seemed like ridiculously out of, like, stupid, like completely the dumbest thing he could have done. No, like you would never predict that he would be no. We predicted he would hate it, but to do the like aggressive union busting while running for Congress, it's just so nuts, man. Okay, block 3. He writes, already this particular union has misled you several times about what they, quote, got out of us. Here, Cenk is insisting the union was being dishonest with the workers. He writes again, or writes another thing. When your so-called representatives taunt us publicly with things that aren't even true. I write, the phrase so-called indicates Cenk believes the IATSE reps were not representing worker interests. Block 4. I'll just show it to you. That's this one here. He writes, but I'm sure someone at IATSE told you we're big bad management who is lying about everything and that the best thing to do is apply pressure by doing maximum damage. And I write, assumptions about IATSE's intention and honesty support Cenk's narrative that there was an intention to do maximum damage. So I think I could have probably done a little bit more interpretive language here regarding this, but someone at IATSE told you indicates that we're just being fed misinformation from IATSE, that big bad management is lying. Well, we all lived a lie. We literally sat there and watched him lie on Twitter via those statements, the ploy to intimidate, Anna signal boosted it, other motives at play, articles wrote about it as a conspiracy. Do you think the Young Turks workers didn't understand whether we were manipulated or not? So yeah, nobody, not that anybody IATSE told us they were lying. We experienced the fucking lying. And that the best thing to do is to apply pressure by doing maximum damage. So the way you do damage, in this case, is if he busts the union. Him saying yes to the union wouldn't cause any damage. It would have been a positive. I have a little bit about that here. But as if there was anybody wanted to damage his union. Like that was the point. The whole reason why we did any of this was so that We knew he would suddenly decide to become a politician because he heard about George Papadopoulos running for Congress. And then our intention was to hurt that? What? By betting that he would bust the union, which nobody would bet that. We would know. Don't do it, Cenk. I don't have another documentary in me, okay, man? Not about your bullshit. God damn it. I'm fucking irritated that I had to deal with that and this shit at all. I'm so pissed. That's a part of I tried to make woodworking videos after Young Turks. I should be on YouTube being a funny woodworker. For fuck's sake. Cenk probably wishes that's what happened instead of this. He writes, speaking of strategy, some have suggested that the timing of the IATSE action was not because they were opposed to my campaign, but because it was a good moment of leverage against me. So he's kind of saying that some are suggesting that it's not because they're opposed to his campaign, but because it's leverage. Well, both of those could be true. That doesn't flow really well. But anyway, here's what I wrote back, or wrote to that. I wrote, Cenk isn't wrong that him running for Congress altered how leverage could be generated. A boss running for Congress while union busting is indeed a unique circumstance. I mean, just like we were full steam ahead with the union, and then he becomes a politician, and we're like, well, yeah, that changes the way we do leverage. No fucking shit, man. Of course. The hell kind of people you think we are? And I wasn't there for any discussions about when to come out at all. I would have been, I'm not going to shock anybody here, but I would have been for turning those screws as hard as fucking possible because I don't fuck around. I'm starting to swear too much. I don't do proportional pushback. Not my thing. I would have been for absolutely going full steam on the leverage as hard as possible. That's what I would have advised. But I was not involved with that because like that, those sort of discussions happened after I was fired as it got closer to coming forward. So I keep going here. I wrote, but this sentence presumes there is validity to the notion IATSE was motivated to unionize the Young Turks as a political act. If that's the case, why was IATSE on board in two separate instances before Cenk became a politician? I already said that. IATSE wasn't out to harm Cenk's campaign. It answered a call from workers who wanted to address workplace grievances. That's what unions do. No person familiar with Cenk's politics, e.g., his longtime employees, who probably understand the guy's politics better than anybody, would predict he would reject a union. We predicted he would be unhappy, but not that he would reject it and do union busting. In TYT's version, a trap is set that requires he refuse to recognize. The caper only works if Cenk busts the union. Had Cenk voluntarily recognized the union, the ploy backfires. It becomes a big payoff. He would have been able to campaign on that as evidence of lived principles, and it would be a bright spot in future political campaigns, such as his run for president in 2024 and his upcoming run for governor in 2042. That's just kind of a joke. I do actually think he should run for governor. They'll let an immigrant be governor. Go for it, man. Do it. Let's see that political savvy. Prove who you really are. Run for governor or run for Congress. Do it correctly. I think Cenk in Congress would be really fucking interesting. I really do. It helped my movie a lot, probably. So I'm for it for that reason. But come on. Mr. Hot Shot, do it. Don't just foist it off on Michael Schur because he wanted to go talk to rich people in their houses with all their fancy deep shelves. Rich people always have deep shelves. Ever notice that? All right. Another point for me. Rejecting the union is what harmed Cenk's campaign. The person who made that decision was Cenk. That's the whole thing here. It's like his whole posture is that my cat's making noise. Anybody want a cat? Anybody, please, for the love of Christ. I can't handle having a cat. And she deserves better than my stupid ass. It's partially what stresses me out. See, now my brain's fucked. Partially what he's kind of going at on this is that there was this intention to hurt him. It's all about this kind of narcissistic interpretation, this like the narcissism colored lenses that he sees the world through. It seems to me that as if him busting the union had to be a thing. And I think that's, I mean, okay, let me finish this here. It is also objectively true that Cenk's campaign would have been harmed if he were forced to tell his audience the reasons, as detailed below, his workers organized a union. There was an incentive to offer his audience an alternative narrative. So that's a bit of an opinion, I guess, but I did use the word objectively. But I think everybody would agree that a guy running for Congress on a platform of progressive policies.
45,000 people a year die because they don't have health insurance.
Who's made his entire brand and career off of.
We're on a rescue mission. How hard would you run to save those lives?
Calling out other companies for corporate malfeasance and.
Picture them. 45,000 people.
Saying workers need to stand up for each other. You saw the video we played earlier.
It's about time that the working class in this country had a little bit of power.
What if we were actually the ones that actually stood up for people and stood up for ourselves?
There are real consequences for employees who even bring up the notion of unionizing. People get fired immediately.
Overpower them, and they could bully them, and they could intimidate them because they got a lot of workers here and they want to pay them as little as possible.
And that if he had to tell his audience and the political press that, oh yeah, my workers are unionized. Well, why do they unionize? Well, there's one guy wasn't getting health insurance. What? Why didn't he get? Was he working full time? Yeah, he was working full time. Why didn't he get health insurance? Well, because he was an independent contractor. Well, why was that? What? Because that's what we required he signed before working there. Well, was he doing like? No, he was working on regular company business, on company time, on company property, under company supervision, under company management. And the person whose role he replaced was also a full-time employee. And the people he worked alongside was also a full-time employee. Well, what did you do when he complained? Well, we changed him to part-time. We made him an employee. Oh, good. You fixed it. Well, no, we didn't fix. We fixed something. We didn't fix. Did he get benefits when he was part-time? No, part-time workers don't get benefits. Well, how many hours was he working? Well, he was 40, easily over 40 hours a week. And yet you called him part-time? Yes. And this is the reason your workers unionized? Of course. I mean, he didn't want to have to tell his audience why workers unionized. And he even writes about that. I have just a couple more clarity here about Anna tweeting out that she's not management. It's important for people to understand that. She definitely doesn't have any positive feelings about this story here, as this tweet shows. She writes, this is just retweeting TYT's 10 tweet IATSE thing. Screed. This is a detailed thread on the TYT union situation. I really have nothing to add to this since I'm not in the executive team, management, or the board. I'd appreciate if everyone stopped demanding statements from me. And then because I was a former worker, I included myself in this part because I made it clear that I was available to talk. And if they wanted to check the facts, they could have. Nobody there contacted me about fact checking. My 3 tweets, I wrote, I'm a former employee of TYT who was part of the organizing effort, got laid off in early January. Speaking only to the suggestion that, quote, other motives are at play, I can confirm that is total bullshit. We began the effort long before Cenk's campaign, in secret, of course. This is about living our principles and standing together to improve material conditions in the workplace. It's about worker rights, which Cenk is a big proponent of. The suggestion that TYT's employees are being manipulated by IATSE, that's a typo, by IATSE or by Cenk's opponent is frankly insulting. TYT is staffed by brilliant, hardworking, kind, and decent progressives, liberals, and lefties. It was a joy and a privilege to work with so many talented people. They deserve to have their right to organize recognized, not answered with insults and lawyers speak. Hashtag solidarity. Solidarity. So that's what I said. And that's kind of the end of this whole version bit here, of TYT's version. The above captures the Young Turks version of why and when a union formed at their company. If an article is ever written, I'm hopeful they are given an opportunity to verify their claims and show supporting evidence for why their version is the correct version. This would include their proof that the claims I'm making are untrue. If TYT's version is correct, they should be able to prove it. Yeah, and also prove why, if their version's correct, everything that their workers told those reporters were lies and that their workers fabricated emails to show the reporters. They have to prove that. So, really quickly here, though, we'll get back to this. Cenk calls himself, he writes, I don't know where I go to get my reputation back. This is in his emails to the workers. Some portion of people will now forever know me as a union buster, and much worse, as a boss who treats his employees poorly. So, if you wanted to do that damage, you already have. So what else is there left to do but vote? So he knows he's being labeled as a union buster. He doesn't exactly admit he is one. He says he will be known as that, not arguing that any of this wasn't union busting. And it's even worse for him. So this is the decision he made. Either I tell my audience, either I become a union buster, or my audience finds out I'm a boss who treats his employees poorly. And I'm sure you noticed what I named the title of the first article, or at least the graphic of it: a boss who treats his employees poorly. Yeah. So when I talked about the umbrage, sorry, I'm not going to find the spot here, but I opened the link. Oh yeah, the unfair treatment that Team Cenk had been receiving. I opened up this link here. It's our good old man Kyle Kulinski tweeting about the New York Times deceiving and writing very smearful kind of piece about Cenk's interpretation of how Cenk responded to a David Duke interview. Cenk was being very clearly aggressively anti-David Duke, anti-KKK, very clearly. As you watch this, you cannot, there's only one conclusion you can come to. And he sarcastically says, no, of course not, to David Duke, which the New York Times reported as if when David Duke said, I am not what you call a racist. And Cenk said sarcastically, no, of course not. New York Times reported that as if he was like agreeing with David Duke, which is just ridiculous. And so this became a big deal. This is the whole core of the ethical dark web. And God damn it, Kyle Kulinski, you need to talk to me. You need to do a bit on this story. If you cared about this at the time, you should care about Young Turks workers' story being told correctly, because the cavalry showed up for Cenk when the mainstream media smeared him, and the only person that showed up for the Young Turks workers when Cenk smeared his own workers was me. We could use your help, Kyle. Come on, Kyle. We'll go golfing. I used to caddy. So this is, why is it? Get rid of that. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I've gotten to know a little bit the TYT mods. They had a rebellion in chat in relation to the transphobic commentary that was emerging from the Young Turks. This is a lot of the firestorm that brewed up around Anna, the firing of Benny from, I think Benny left voluntarily. I don't mean to be saying, but like a non-binary contributor, Sandy Lovis, who does a great YouTube channel called Left of the Box, also made a stand and withdrew participation. These sorts of principles that the mods were expected to enforce were suddenly being violated by the people on the show. So I'm not going to read the entire article. I will get back to this. They resigned. It took a lot of courage. I know it's a group. There's a great episode of The Letter Hack called When Mods Resign on YouTube. Look for that. It's a long discussion. They talk about this a lot. They go into a lot of detail. Really appreciate that Matt Strackbind on The Letter Hack provides that space for them to talk. And these were all unpaid. And this is not just like modding a forum an hour or two a week. This is not just like hanging out in a chat with your buddies and you're a mod for some streamer channel. This is like a huge well-known media company with millions of dollars in operating budget, I assume. I mean, they got $20 million from Katzenberg and all that stuff. And at high levels of this, of high engagement, you attract all kinds of, spiders. I'm thinking of a haunted forest. Like the bugs come out, the ghouls show up, they turn up in your chat, and they have to be policed out. They have to be moderated out. And so these mods had to be exposed to the entire brunt of all of that while keeping up with the chat, while keeping up with the activity going on in there, kicking people out, dealing with complaint. I mean, it's a very engaged thing. And a lot of these mods are autistic and have other disabilities. And we're hoping to someday gain some kind of employment from this work that they did. And they had to follow TYT's schedule. They were working like 8-hour days, basically. Morning times, restream times, where it streams on other platforms. Like, they had a schedule that they were expected to follow. It was a job. And they weren't getting paid. So I just wanted to kind of highlight the top of this letter here. You can get to this. It's linked through this piece about TYT that we've been reading. They write, letter to TYT owners, staff, and volunteers. We are sorry to say that we're resigning from providing TYT with our unpaid labor. We had agreed to moderate for a strong progressive channel who had strong core values. Over the past year, hosts, mostly on the main show, have allowed their own core values to slip, making us question whether they even have those as values. Some specific ones include, every action we take is to support our mission. We participate with a positive and productive attitude. We are inclusive. We lead by example. We participate in constructive communication. We check our ego at the door, and we act with dignity. Every action we take is to support our mission. The mission is to boldly pursue the truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. End quote. We fail to see how bad-mouthing, insulting, and belittling the unhoused helps to drive any form of positive change, or how it challenges the establishment. Corporate media and the wealthy look down on the unhoused, and Anna's anti-homeless rant is in direct support to that mission. Failure to provide any ideas on how to help that don't include barbaric measures, only dogpiling. I'm going to read that again. Failure to provide any ideas on how to help that don't include barbaric measures, only dogpiling onto the problems that the unhoused have across the nation by furthering negative stereotypes is the opposite of positive change for that community. And they go on in a couple other ways too. So good for them. This is an important part. I'm not sure if this will be in the final version of the film. I hope to. I'm not going to go deep on it. It'll be more of like a montage, I think. But again, I don't know. Maybe as I get the timeline edited, that's usually when things kind of start to, changes can come about. So, the rest of this article is me showing all my information just to back up the claims that I was an independent contractor. I just want to give a quick scroll. All these hours are from Gusto and invoices, the 3 different classifications. These are examples of the invoices I would send in and that I would get paid. This is like right here an example of if I were paid, there would be entries in these little red arrow bits. And just like there is here, when I finally did get paid after 12 months of full-time video editing, I finally did get a first paid days off. Here's the independent contractor agreement. Very much lays out no benefits. Like you go to work for Cenk Uygur and you have to sign a contract saying you're not going to get health insurance. That's just fucking wild, man. I've said it too. Like if it was a month or two, that would have been really annoying, but I would have dealt with that. I don't think I would have made a documentary. I get into some of the stuff about the differences as far as how the state of California addresses independent contractor versus employees and the definitions, and I relate it to the stuff I've done. I did a freelance job for the Young Turks. Here's the start where I emailed them. At first I had a meeting where I asked for help. I don't have proof of this, so I can't necessarily say it's there, but why would I lie about this? So I had a meeting. This is what changed the first classification into the second classification. Then the third classification in October, I had some questions, which I did formalize in an email. And they wrote back, we will not backdate payer benefits. They kept the money I had earned. I felt like they were stealing from me the whole time. That's what it felt like. Thousands of fucking dollars, man. Just a lot of money. And there's a bunch of little bits here. And then email proof. This is the part of the emails that were sent to the reporting where they write about the emails that were sent to Alex Thompson for the Politico piece. Now, I don't have those emails, but where I'm accepting them on faith that they exist because they were shown to a third-party reporter. And if you're to accept TYT's version, then you have to believe that these emails were fabricated and made up. And that would be a very slanderous thing to say about your own workers, wouldn't it? We end up at the conclusion. I did put a little picture of my bald eagle there. It's my head. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful skull. It's just white feathers, by the way. They're not really bald. I write, I maintain that at no point was I an independent contractor, nor a part-time worker. I was every bit a part of the team as other editors. There were many other reasons for the organizing, but a core driver of it was so that I would receive the same benefits as others doing the same work. My coworkers were bothered that one of their own was under such stress, and as a group, we were motivated to do something about it. This is what they call solidarity. I'll summarize my claim here, and I'm inviting you to assess my honesty on the matter of why a union formed at TYT. In bold, italicized, so you know this is some serious words. In exchange for full-time video editing at the video production company for which I worked, I believed I deserved health care, paid time off, and other benefits on par with those who did the same job. I also believed I did not deserve to feel such stress and disrespect, wanting only to do a good job at my profession. Asking my boss to correct the situation was fruitless. Collective bargaining was the only tool available to correct what felt like a deeply unethical, ongoing injustice. We now have two versions of the story to reconcile, I write. In a header font size 4, I don't know what it is. One of these is not true. We have two versions here. My version. Workers unionized because of unsatisfactory and exploitative working conditions. Versus TYT's version. So does scrolling get rid of the share quote thing? TYT's version. Workers were manipulated into unionizing by Cenk Uygur's political opponents as a ploy to harm his 2019 to 2020 congressional campaign for CA25 special election to replace Katie Hill against establishment favorite Christy Smith. Who's telling the truth? Who's telling the truth? You like my awkward hand gesture here? Who's telling the truth? Huh? So go to baldontheinside.substack.com. Read all this. Look at all of it. It's a lot of details. I'd love to get in touch with a reporter or a journalist. Someone wants to do something about this story, maybe about my project, maybe about the labor movement in general. I mean, this story really captures a lot of different factors within the labor movement. The fight for workplace dignity. It has this extra dimension of Cenk running for Congress, which completely sends it off into crazy land as far as the stakes that were at play and the kind of attention that was brought to it. That's kind of why the movie becomes about that in a way. It's sort of like the unofficial documentary about that situation. But I'd love a journalist to get in touch with me, or some bigger channel that really wants to dive in on this. I'd love to get some legal assistance, like Legal Eagle or one of those law firm sites or content creators that would like to dive in on this stuff. They probably think I'm a terrible this guy's a loose cannon. He's crazy. Look, he's doing all this shit. I can't afford a fucking lawyer. As I told the Vanguard, the only lawyer I can afford is Barbara Streisand. That's the dang truth.